Welcome to AMT Standard Bank Fresh Produce Overview. In this week's episode, proudly brought to you by Standard Bank and Villa, we look at the latest price movements and focus on the citrus market and the effects of the Trump tariffs on orange prices especially. All in this week's episode, so make sure to stay tuned. Our biggest price movers over the past week was oranges with a 16% drop in prices, while blueberry prices increased by about 10% week on week. Demand is likely to pick up towards the weekend, which can support some prices, but the big worry now is the effect of the Trump tariffs that kicks in on 1 August. But with that, let's dive into the latest prices of the past week. The national average potato price increased last week to an average of 48 Rand per 10 kilogram bag and is now 31% lower than last year this time. Large potatoes traded at 54 Rand, mediums at 45 and smalls on 32 Rand. Mondials dropped to 46 while Cifras came in on 55 Rand on average. The average price for Class 1 potatoes across all sizes and all markets came in on 53 Rand 59 per 10 kilogram bag. Although we had better demand last week, which is likely to continue into this week as well, prices still remained on a relatively lower level, especially compared to last year. Demand is simply not keeping up with the larger supply on the markets at the moment. In 2022, we had a similar situation with volumes remaining high and prices remaining well below the 50 Rand mark over this period of the year. We expect this trend to continue until November, of course. The average onion price decreased by 4% to 60 Rand 72 per 10 kilogram and is now 11% lower compared to a year ago. Brown onions averaged on 62, red onions decreased slightly to 119 Rand and white onions decreased to 58 Rand. Large onions traded sharply lower at 62 Rand and was the main driver downward for these prices. Mediums traded on 68 and smalls slightly higher on 41 Rand last week. We expect demand to improve towards the weekend, which can give short-term support to this price. We are still, however, expecting higher volumes to push prices below the 50 Rand mark as we head towards the end of this year. Tomato prices decreased last week and traded 12% lower on 8 Rand 73 per kilogram. Large tomatoes traded at 8 Rand 19, mediums on 9 Rand 56 and smalls now on 7 Rand 97. Although demand is likely to improve towards this weekend, higher volumes can limit any upward movement over the next week, unfortunately. Carrot prices decreased by 1% last week to 5 Rand 89 per kilogram, which was mostly due to a 2% increase in volumes over the past week. The average price is now 51% higher compared to a year ago, while volumes were about 22% lower compared to last year this time. Large carrots traded on 6 Rand 62, mediums at 4 Rand 96 and smalls on 2 Rand 92. It's starting to look that prices can stay on these higher levels for the next few months, despite the markets being very quiet at the moment as well. We however expect demand to pick up towards the weekend, which can give some additional support to this carrot price. This video is proudly sponsored by Villa. Through world-class technology like Masterlock, localized for South African conditions, Villa helps you manage risk, increase productivity and get it right the first time. Backed by research that keeps you ahead. The average pepper price increased by 4% to 24 Rand 31 per kilogram. Green peppers came in at 18 Rand 13, yellow peppers dropped to 33 Rand 96 and red peppers decreased to 34 Rand 98. The lower volumes and higher expected demand over the next week can result in slightly higher prices again as we move towards the end of the month. Cabbage prices increased by about 9% last week to 3 Rand 30 per kilogram and is likely to decrease this week with demand usually shifting to more staple commodities over this period. Garlic prices dropped to 71 Rand 37 with local garlic on 73 Rand 47 and imported garlic now on 68 Rand 80 per kilogram. Garlic prices will likely remain on a higher level for now and start trending downward as we head towards November, when a bottom is expected for the year. Spinach prices decreased by 20% to R3.59 per kilogram, while sweet potato prices increased slightly to R4.80 last week. Another big mover over the past 2 weeks or so was pumpkin prices, which increased again by 15% to R4.78, which is now 69% higher than a year ago. Volumes are 18% lower year on year, creating a shortage in the markets at the moment and pushing these prices higher. Butternuts increased to R6.31, green beans dropped by more than 23% to R10.97, while cucumbers traded 18% lower on R11.43 last week. Our latest reports are also now available on our website, so go check them out at amtrends.co.za. Moving over to the fruit markets, however, the average banana price increased by 2% to R6.97 per kilogram last week, or R125 per 18 kilogram box. If demand picks up towards the weekend, which is expected, prices will likely follow and increase as well over the next week or so. Apple prices traded higher on R9.94 per kilogram, while pear prices dropped to R9.25. Orange prices decreased by 16% to R3.89 per kilogram, which is now 26% lower compared to a year ago. Local volumes are about 42% higher year on year, and we can now see the impact of the Trump tariffs on the citrus industry. This will put severe pressure on the profitability of our farmers, and a better deal needs to be negotiated with the US to mitigate this risk. Other markets must also be explored as soon as possible. We still anticipate orange prices to remain on a lower level over the following 2 to 3 months due to higher expected local volumes. But if a new deal is made with the US or a new deal with a new market is made, prices can jump again, so keep that in mind. Avocado prices increased by 6% to R18.75 per kilogram. Fiates traded on 25, Haas on 18 and Pinkertons on R16 per kilogram. Expect prices to remain in a slight upward trend until October, after which it can start to increase sharply as the season comes to an end and local volumes decreases. The average grape price increased by 4% last week to R58.86 per kilogram. We still expect grape prices to peak in July and remain on a higher level in August due to low volumes on the local markets. Pineapples increased to R9.77, lemons also decreased to R5.32, while the average blueberry price increased by about 10% to R80 per kilogram last week. This episode was proudly brought to you by Standard Bank and Villa. For more detailed insights, forecasts and free downloadable reports, visit amtrends.co.za now. I'm Dr. Johnny van der Merwe. Thanks for watching and see you next week.